Yora, welcome to step number 5. You made it this far. Step number 5 is about creating our first scenario. And remember, we are on the series of building our own automation framework right from scratch. What will be covered on this session? We will be installing something called a Cucumber plugin, and that is for us to have more easily access to build gherkin scenarios. Second, we will create our first feature file with the format given when then. Third, we will create our step definitions, and that's how the steps on the gherkin file interact with the steps in the Java testing framework of our choice. And finally, we will do our first scenario run. We will explore some commands, Maven commands, and we will also be running the test from the UI as well in IntelliJ. All right, let's get started. Step number 1, remember, we need to install some plugins. If you haven't done that before, it is quite easily. So the first thing you need to do is go to settings and then look for plugins and then look in marketplace. The plugin we're looking for is called Cucumber for Java. It's just right on top. This may take a couple of minutes or seconds depending on your bandwidth. And once it's installed, it will ask you to restart your IDE. Yes, let's do that. Take a couple of seconds to come back, and once it's back, we will have our plugin installed. Cool. If you want to validate whether the plugin has been installed or not, we repeat the steps. So we go to settings, plugin, and then instead of marketplace, we go to install. And as you can see, by default, it installed two plugins. One is Cucumber for Java, and the other one is Gherkin. Again, I'm not going to go into details. Just make sure you have these two plugins installed on your IntelliJ. By default, if you install Cucumber for Java, the plugin, the Gherkin plugin, will come by default. Cool. Now, second step, we need to create our first feature file. For that, we will do a right click, new file, and the feature file that we will be creating is going to be something simple, login, as the first login page, or is one of the first features we interact with in any application, mobile or web. So let's name it login dot, and this is important, the extension of the file must be feature. Cool. Now this is asking us to add it as a Git. Remember, in the previous step we add our project as part of a GitHub repository. So let's click on add. Now we start our feature file with the keyword feature column, and as you can see, because we already installed the plugin, we have some recommendations of what to do next. Let's just use the word login. The second step is a scenario, and you have three types of scenarios in Cucumber. You can either do a single scenario, you can do a scenario outline, and that is very kind of data driven sort of scenarios, you can use something called template, which is very similar to a scenario outline, with the difference is that you have a different file, so that the file comes from an external dataset. So let's use a scenario for now, and we want to test a successful login. So what happens when you have you input valid credentials and to your login to your application. So the naming of the scenarios is very important. We can test user is able to log into mobile application. And as we said earlier, we will be using the format given user is on the login page when user input credentials. And we're going to use something called table. So username, password, cool. And for now we just call it this user X, and then password 123. Then user is able to access, let's say, dashboard. All right, and this is our first scenario. It consists of 5 elements. Element number 1 is the feature name, in this case is login. Element number 2 is the scenario name, and under the scenario you can use the Gherkin language, given, when, then. Given, you provide some context, when user performs an action, and then this is the verification step. So you verify that the outcome or the result of the actions of this previous step. You could have multiple scenarios in the same feature file, and you can have also multiple type of scenarios. It could be either a scenario outline or it can be a scenario template as well. All right, let's go with the third step. Now that we have created our feature file, the only thing left is to create a step definition. There are several ways we could achieve this. One of them is just simple run the feature step, and that will give you some of the basic code or that you can then just copy and paste in a Java class. As you can see, this is the code that is being displayed by default. This way is not too optimal. There's a better way to do that, and you can just hover over these yellow stripes just underneath, or you can click on the light bulb, and you will be presented with two options. You can either create the step definition for a particular step, or you can create them for all the definitions in your feature file. Now, once you select all the definitions on the feature file, you have this option here, to which we will address in 3 different steps. So step number 1, you need to select the file type. So make sure this is Java, not Java 8. Step number 2, we need to specify the location where we want the step definition to live. So for that, just right click, make sure you are in the test folder. So we can even go as this one. So CRS, you see test, Java, TechDojo, org, automation, and just keep navigating until you reach this folder here called steps, because this is the place where we want to store all our steps definition. And step number 3, make sure you rename the file to something that is more meaningful. Now, our feature file is called login. Therefore, our step definition file will be called login step def. Cool. Once we have done these 3 steps, we select the file type, the file location, and the file name. Click on OK. This will automatically create a new Java class with the name login step definition, and will contain all the methods in your feature file. Now we're not quite there done yet. So if you want to run this test one more time, locate mobile test runner or your test runner. So remember, this is something we did in the previous step. Right click and then run mobile test runner. Cool. We have been presented with a different error. So the first error was, hey, you are trying to run the feature file, but there are no step definitions on it. So do you want to add them? And we had some code that reflects that step definition. Now, this step is quite different. So this step says, hey, you have a step definition in your feature file that is expecting an attribute. That attribute is of type table. And this table is describing an object, a user, which contains 2 attributes, username and password. Now let's go to that step. So as you can see, this is a step on line number 5, when user input credentials. Those credentials are username and password. Okay, so we are describing a user, and these are the attributes of a user. Now in your automation framework, in the main package, locate the DTO folder or DTO package. We are going to create a new Java class, and we are going to describe a user. So let's do that. User. We're going to select class and make sure the attributes of this new class are the same attributes as the one described in the step definition. So in this section here on line number 6, username and password. So let's do that. It's going to be private string username, private string, and the next one is going to be password. Now, every time you create a data transfer object, make sure you generate the getters and setters, so these attributes are actually accessible from other classes. All right, so now that we have our class users or a data transfer object called user, let's go back to our login step definition, locate the step which has the problem. In this case is user input credentials. When user input credentials, and let's add a new attribute. So this attribute is user. Yes, import class. And let's try to run the test again. locate the mobile test runner, right click and run. Voila! Now you have successfully created your first feature file. We have added the different step definitions and we have successfully run our feature. Now we have run the feature from the IDE perspective. There is a simple way to run it from the terminal window as well. And there are two commands that you could use. So the first one is called I think it's MV. Sorry. There. So it's MVNW or MVN as well. And then you can just run MVNW/test. This again will find and it will execute your test, or you can run verify as well. Cool. Now the difference between test and verify is quite simple. So test, you're going to use MVN test to execute unit test, and you normally use MVN verify when you want to run integration test. They actually do the same thing. Alright, that's pretty much it for this session. Let's do a quick recap of what we have learned. Alright, in summary, we did learn how to install new plugins in IntelliJ. We learned how to create new feature files using the given when then syntax. And we also learned how to specify step definitions as well as creating DTOs or data transfer objects, so we can pass data from the feature file to the step definition. And last but not least, we also learned how to run the test from IntelliJ using the runner class or by executing some of the MVNW commands. And there is a difference between test and verify. Test is to execute unit test and verify is to execute integration test. Again, these two commands basically do the same thing for us. It's more, the use of these commands are mostly for developers. Cool, so that's it for today, and I'll be waiting for you in our next step number 6, where we will be learning how to work with page object model and start interacting with some of the mobile elements of the application itself. See ya.